The sound of fabric tearing echoed through the empty corridor. Red material tightened around pale skin like a python coiling its prey. But the gasping breath filling that hallway didn't come from the girl pressed against the locker. It came from Mason Caldwell himself, his $800 bomber jacket clutched in trembling hands. Harper Quinn's ice-blue eyes remained eerily calm as her lips moved in a whisper. 15, 14, 13. She wasn't crying, wasn't begging. Instead, her small hand held a phone with the screen glowing bright. Live stream, 487 viewers. The hallway camera sat dark, as it always did during lunch period. But there was something Mason didn't know. Harper had been waiting 3 weeks for exactly this moment. The only question burning in the minds of those 487 silent witnesses was this: why would a girl being attacked look this terrifyingly calm? Before we dive deeper into what happened next, I need to share something important with you. If you've ever felt powerless against bullying, or if you know someone suffering in silence right now, this story proves that preparation and courage can defeat even the most corrupt systems. Hit that like button. If you believe in justice, drop a comment sharing your experience or words of support for those still fighting, and make sure to subscribe, because Harper's story is far from over. There are secrets about her we haven't revealed yet, and a new threat is already forming in the shadows. 3 weeks earlier, Harper Quinn had walked through the iron gates of Westridge Academy with nothing but a worn backpack and the kind of quiet that made teachers nervous. The prestigious private school sat in Denver's wealthiest district, where parking lots gleamed with luxury vehicles and last names carried more weight than SAT scores. Harper had earned her spot through pure academic brilliance, a full scholarship that covered the $85,000 annual tuition but couldn't buy her acceptance among the legacy students who'd been groomed for Westridge since birth. At 17, she possessed the kind of sharp intelligence that made classmates resentful and a physical presence so unassuming that she practically disappeared in crowded hallways. She was exactly 5 feet 2 inches of carefully controlled stillness, with blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail and features that suggested fragility. But there were details, small things that didn't quite fit. The way her wrists were always wrapped in athletic tape she claimed covered an old sprain. The peculiar wear pattern on her sneakers, concentrated at the balls of her feet like someone who spent hours pivoting and shifting weight. The way she gripped her pen, fingers positioned like she was holding something far heavier than plastic. Mason Caldwell noticed her on day 1, though not for the reasons he'd later wish he hadn't. The 18-year-old captain of the wrestling team moved through Westridge's corridors with the swagger of someone who'd never heard the word no carry any real meaning. His signature red bomber jacket, custom-made, ridiculously expensive, had become a symbol of power at Westridge. When Mason wore that jacket, people moved out of his way. When he draped it over a chair, that table became his territory. And when he approached Harper Quinn in the cafeteria during that first week, extending an invitation to homecoming with the casual confidence of someone offering charity, he expected the same grateful acceptance every other scholarship student had given him. Harper looked up from her chemistry textbook, met his blue eyes with her own pale gaze, and said simply, "No, thank you." Then she returned to her reading as if he'd already ceased to exist. The cafeteria didn't gasp. Westridge students were too well-bred for that, but the silence that followed carried its own weight. Mason Caldwell, son of Victor Caldwell, who sat on the school board and chaired the largest real estate empire in Colorado, had just been dismissed like he was nobody. His jaw tightened. His friends, Blake Sullivan and Troy Bennett, exchanged glances that promised this wasn't over. Because at Westridge Academy, when someone with Mason's pedigree decided you needed to learn respect, The education began immediately and ended only when you transferred schools or broke completely. The campaign started subtle. Week 1 brought the small humiliations, books knocked from Harper's arms in passing, her usual library seat always occupied when she arrived, whispers that followed her down corridors like smoke. Harper absorbed it all with the same unsettling calm, though anyone watching closely might have noticed her pulling out a small notebook during each incident, jotting down details with the precision of someone filing a report. She logged times, locations, witnesses, building something, though what remained unclear. She also seemed to know things that didn't make sense for a new student. When Blake tried to intimidate her near the science wing, Harper mentioned almost casually, "Did you know Colorado law classifies assault on school grounds as a felony if there's video evidence? Minimum 3-year sentence." Blake had laughed it off, but something in her tone made him step back. By week 2, Mason escalated to digital warfare. Anonymous accounts sprouted across social media, posting doctored images of Harper, with captions that ranged from cruel to vicious. One claimed she'd slept with a teacher to secure her scholarship. Another suggested she was only admitted to fill a diversity quota. Blake, who fancied himself tech-savvy, spread the posts across every platform Westridge students frequented. Within 72 hours, the lies had accumulated over 2,000 views. Harper's response was not what they expected. She didn't cry, didn't defend herself, didn't even seem to care. Instead, she methodically screenshotted every post, every share, every comment. She traced IP addresses back to the school library computers, noting the timestamps, and when she was certain she had enough, she filed everything into a folder labeled simply, Evidence, Week 2. There was something else peculiar about Harper that week. She received a phone call during lunch period, speaking in low tones to someone she addressed only as Coach Anderson. Her end of the conversation was cryptic. "Not yet. I need them to escalate. A misdemeanor won't cut it. I need felony-level violations before we move." Anyone listening might have wondered what kind of coach talks in terms of legal classifications, but Mason and his crew weren't paying attention to her words. They were too busy planning their next move, confident that the scholarship girl would crack any day now. Week 3 brought physical escalation. Mason's patience had eroded completely, replaced by something darker, a need to dominate, to prove that his money and status made him untouchable. On Monday, he and his friends cornered Harper in the equipment room during gym class, blocking the exit for over 2 hours while they debated exactly how to teach her a lesson. They didn't know she'd found the ventilation grate, pushed her phone's microphone against it, and recorded every word they said outside. Troy's voice captured clearly. "We need to make sure she understands her place here." Blake adding, "Nobody rejects Mason and walks away thinking they're better than us." Mason himself, coldest of all. "Tomorrow. The locker hallway, during lunch. I'll use the jacket. Make it symbolic." Harper listened to every word, her breathing controlled, her mind working through the legal implications. Unlawful imprisonment, conspiracy to commit assault, premeditated attack with witnesses. She sent the audio file to a cloud server with automatic timestamps that couldn't be altered. Then she waited. When they finally opened the door, expecting tears or terror, Harper simply walked past them without a word, her spine straight, her expression unreadable. That night, she made 2 phone calls, one to Coach Anderson. "It's happening tomorrow, 12:07 p.m., Locker Hallway D." The second to Officer Dana Martinez, the school resource officer. "I may need you to respond to the West Wing around 12:15 p.m. I can't explain why yet, but please trust me." Tuesday morning arrived with autumn sunlight streaming through Westridge's tall windows. Harper dressed carefully, jeans, a simple hoodie, and underneath, the athletic tape she always wore, covering scars on her knuckles that told stories she'd never shared at this school. She ate breakfast mechanically, reviewed her evidence files one final time, and walked into Westridge Academy knowing exactly what was coming. Mason was already there, his red jacket bright as a warning flag, his friends flanking him like soldiers awaiting orders. The dance had been choreographed over 3 weeks. Now came the final performance. During the equipment room incident, a curious thing had happened that no one noticed but Harper. As she'd pressed her phone against the ventilation grate, her sleeve had ridden up, revealing a bracelet on her wrist, simple black cord with a small metal charm. The charm bore an engraving too small to read in poor light, but in the right angle it clearly showed USA Combat Sports, active license. When Troy had grabbed her arm later to push her toward the exit, Harper's body had shifted in a way that made him stumble, though he'd been the one applying force. It wasn't luck. It was muscle memory from someone who'd spent thousands of hours learning exactly how to redirect momentum, how to turn an attacker's strength against them, how to create space where none existed. But Harper had caught herself, deliberately stumbled to make it look accidental, and filed that moment away too. Not yet. The evidence wasn't complete. As Harper navigated the morning classes, she noticed Mason's growing agitation. His usual swagger had developed an edge of desperation. His father, Victor Caldwell, had been calling him repeatedly. Pressure about grades, about scouts, about living up to the Caldwell legacy. Victor himself had been an Olympic wrestler before a doping scandal ended his career in disgrace. He'd raised Mason with one brutal philosophy. Winning wasn't everything. It was the only thing. And how you won didn't matter as long as you won. That red jacket Mason wore everywhere? It had been a gift from Victor the first time Mason put someone in their place back in 10th grade. Wear it when you need to remind people who's in charge, his father had said. And Mason had. 3 times in the past 2 years, 3 students had transferred out of Westridge after encounters with Mason and that jacket. The school had quietly paid families, shuffled paperwork, and moved on. No one was arrested. No one faced consequences. Because that's how it worked when your father donated 6 figures annually and your last name was on the athletics center. But Harper Quinn wasn't like those other students, though Mason had no way of knowing that yet. While he saw a small, quiet scholarship girl, the reality was far different. The locker that held her books also contained a gym bag she'd carefully hidden behind textbooks. Inside that bag, hand wraps bearing the logo of a prestigious MMA gym, a competition license that listed her weight class and record, and a single photograph of Harper standing on a podium, a gold medal around her neck. Behind her, a banner reading National MMA Under-18 Championship. She was a champion in the 115-pound division, with a record of 23 wins against opponents who'd all underestimated what that small frame could do. She'd faced men 30 pounds heavier and left them unconscious on the mat. She'd endured training sessions that made grown adults quit. And through it all, she'd learned the most important lesson her coach had ever taught her. Real strength isn't about how hard you can hit, it's about how smart you can fight. The clock ticked toward noon. Harper sat in her English class, barely hearing the discussion of To Kill a Mockingbird, her mind running through the plan once more. Mason would make his move during lunch when the hallway cameras went into their 15-minute maintenance cycle, 12 noon to 12:15 p.m., like clockwork. He'd been planning this for days, had probably scouted the location, knew the security gaps. What he didn't know was that Harper had been scouting too. She'd mapped every camera angle, every blind spot, every timing window. She'd set up her phone to automatically start live streaming at 12:06 p.m. to a private account with 487 followers. Every student she'd carefully added over 3 weeks. Kids who'd been bullied, who'd witnessed Mason's cruelty, who were waiting for someone to finally fight back. When the lunch bell rang, Harper didn't rush. She walked calmly to her locker in Hallway D, the West Wing where sound didn't carry well and teachers rarely patrolled. Her fingers brushed the small smartwatch on her wrist, not a fashion piece, but a safety device loaded with GPS tracking, emergency 911 connectivity, and a heart rate monitor that would automatically alert authorities if her stress levels spiked dangerously. Everything was ready. The phone in her pocket was set to record. The live stream was cued. Officer Martinez had been subtly alerted. And most importantly, Harper had done something Mason would never anticipate. She'd let him think he was winning. For 3 weeks, she'd played the victim perfectly, absorbed every humiliation, documented every crime, and waited for him to cross the line that would destroy him completely. Footsteps approached from behind. 3 sets, moving with the confidence of people who believed they owned these hallways. Harper didn't turn around. Instead, she pulled out her phone, checked the time, 12:06 p.m., and with one tap activated the live stream. The camera was positioned perfectly to capture everything behind her. Mason's voice came first, dripping with malice. "Well, well, the scholarship girl, all alone. You've been hard to corner, Harper. But we've got 15 minutes before cameras come back on. Plenty of time to teach you some manners." Harper's finger hovered over her phone screen, watching the viewer count climb. 491, 495, 503. She took a breath, the kind Coach Anderson had taught her. 4 seconds in, hold for 7, slowly out. Her heart rate was 62 beats per minute, dropping even as Mason's hand reached for her shoulder. She let him grab her, let him spin her around, let him push her back against the locker with enough force that the metal rattled. And then, in a voice so calm it was almost serene, Harper Quinn began to count. 15, 14, 13. Mason's confusion was visible. "What are you doing?" Blake and Troy moved in from the sides, forming a triangle, blocking any escape route, or so they thought. Harper's eyes never left Mason's face. 12, 11, 10. Her free hand reached into her pocket, pulling out something that made Mason's blood run cold. Not a weapon, not pepper spray, just a small flash drive on a lanyard that read, "Evidence Archive, 3 weeks compiled." "What the hell is that?" Mason demanded, but his voice had lost its certainty. Harper smiled then, and it was the smile of someone who'd been holding all the cards from the very beginning. 9, 8, 7. She held up her phone, screen facing them. The live stream was active. 612 viewers now, every single one watching Mason Caldwell, in his signature red jacket, committing assault in real time. "That's impossible," Blake whispered. "The cameras are off." Harper's voice was gentle, almost kind. "Your cameras are off. Mine never were. 6, 5, 4. Troy made a move to grab the phone, but Harper's body shifted. Not a big movement, just a subtle redistribution of weight that made him grasp air. It was the first hint of what she truly was. That tiny display of spatial awareness and body control that no ordinary person possessed. Mason saw it. In that split second, he understood he'd made a terrible mistake. But pride wouldn't let him back down. Instead, he did exactly what Harper had been waiting 3 weeks for him to do. He pulled off his red bomber jacket, the symbol of his power, and wrapped it around Harper's neck. The fabric tightened. The hallway spun. And Harper Quinn, national MMA champion, scholarship student, and the smartest person Mason Caldwell had ever underestimated, whispered the final numbers, 3, 2, 1, and that's felony assault on camera. Thank you for the evidence, Mason. Thank you for everything. The red fabric slipped from Mason's trembling fingers as Harper executed a textbook Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu hip escape, smooth, controlled, devastating in its efficiency. She didn't strike him, didn't need to. The jacket fell to the polished floor, its custom embroidery facing upward. M. Caldwell, stitched in gold thread, now physical evidence of felony assault. Mason stumbled backward, his face cycling through shock, rage, and something he'd never experienced before: genuine fear. Blake's phone clattered from his hands as he realized he'd been recording their own crime. Troy pressed himself against the wall, suddenly desperate to be anywhere else. Footsteps echoed from the east corridor, sharp, purposeful, official. Officer Dana Martinez rounded the corner at exactly 12:15 p.m., just as the hallway cameras blinked back to life. Her hand moved instinctively toward her radio, but she stopped mid-reach when she saw Harper's face. Recognition flickered across Martinez's features, followed by complete understanding. Harper Quinn? The Harper Quinn? Her voice carried disbelief. I watched you demolish a 52-kilogram opponent at the Denver Open last year. Harper nodded once, her breathing still perfectly controlled. 4 seconds in, 7 seconds held, slow release. Yes, ma'am. But today I didn't need those skills. I just needed the truth on camera. Within 48 hours, Mason's carefully constructed world disintegrated like sand in a tsunami. The live stream video hit 2 million views, spawning #RedJacketBully across every platform. But the real devastation came when 3 former Westridge students, kids who'd transferred out in shame and silence, saw Harper's broadcast and found their voices again. Savannah Cole was first, posting her own video. Mason Caldwell did this to me in sophomore year. His father paid my family $20,000 to stay quiet. Here's the medical report he thought was buried. Then came Jordan Matthews with screenshots of text messages where Mason bragged about breaking another scholarship kid. Finally, Alex Rivera uploaded security footage his mother had secretly kept. Mason attacking him in the parking lot, while Blake and Troy held other students back from helping. The evidence snowball became an avalanche. FBI agents arrived at Westridge Academy on Thursday morning, their badges gleaming under fluorescent lights as they walked past trophy cases bearing the Caldwell family name. Principal Anderson's office was sealed for investigation, financial records subpoenaed, donation trails examined. By Friday, Anderson had resigned, 2 board members had stepped down, and Victor Caldwell's real estate empire faced federal scrutiny for what prosecutors delicately termed a pattern of using financial influence to obstruct justice in educational institutions. Mason himself sat in juvenile detention, charged with assault, conspiracy to commit harm, and because the evidence showed targeted attacks against scholarship students of diverse backgrounds, federal hate crime violations. Blake and Troy, desperate to avoid similar fates, turned state's evidence so fast their lawyers barely had time to object. Harper stood in Westridge's main corridor exactly 1 week after the locker incident, watching workers remove the Caldwell Athletic Center sign from above the gymnasium doors. Students passed by, some offering quiet thanks. Others, Mason's former circle, shooting resentful glares. She felt neither triumph nor satisfaction, just a bone-deep exhaustion that came from carrying the weight of justice for so many who couldn't carry it themselves. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Impressive work, Quinn. You caught one branch, but you only exposed Westridge. Want to cut down the whole forest? Attached was a video file labeled St. Augustine Prep, Connecticut. Harper's thumb hovered over the play button. The footage showed a different school, different faces, but horrifyingly familiar dynamics. A student in a red Letterman jacket, identical style to Mason's, same arrogant posture, cornering a smaller kid against lockers. The camera zoomed briefly on the jacket's shoulder patch, a logo she hadn't noticed on Mason's jacket before, too subtle to catch unless you knew to look. Legacy Brotherhood, Est 2019. Her blood went cold. This wasn't about one bully at one school. This was organizational, systematic, a network of entitled students across elite institutions connected by red jackets and the belief that money made them untouchable. The message thread continued. We've been tracking them for 18 months. 12 schools. 47 documented victims. All buried under donations and NDAs. You just proved they can be beaten. Interested in going national? The sender's profile was blank. No name, no photo, just a final line that made Harper's chest tighten. P.S. Check your scholarship fund. Someone made a very large anonymous donation in your name. Friend or foe? Your move, champion. Harper's hands trembled as she opened her financial aid portal. There it was. $500,000, designated for anti-bullying advocacy and legal defense initiatives, deposited from an offshore account that would take months to trace. The blood money of guilt, a genuine ally's support, or something more sinister, a buy-off, a way to control her next moves. She looked up at the hallway where it all began, where she'd counted down Mason Caldwell's destruction while a red jacket tightened around her throat. That battle was over. Mason would serve his time, the victims would heal, Westridge would reform. But the war? The war against a brotherhood that spanned coastlines and corrupted institutions? That war was just being revealed. Harper's reflection stared back at her from the polished trophy case. The same small, quiet girl who'd walked through these gates 3 weeks ago, but different now. Harder. More certain. She typed a single word in response to the unknown number. Where? The reply came instantly. Westridge Academy, 1 year from now, when you return as our youngest anti-bullying coordinator. They'll never see you coming again. Harper closed her phone, touched the athletic tape on her wrists that hid scars from 100 victories, and whispered to her reflection words that would define everything coming next. Some fights don't end when the villain goes to jail. They only begin when the victim finds her voice. And I just learned how to scream. The hallway camera blinked red, recording everything, just as Harper had planned all along. Somewhere, in a prep school across the country, another red jacket was being pulled from a locker. Another kid was being cornered. But this time, someone was watching.